they like the wines.
Yeah, that's the first
thing. Right, the first
I had to like that.
Yeah, like they taste it, then all of a sudden they're looking at the label. And that's kind of the order you want, really, right? Like taste it and then go, oh, that tastes nice, and then grab the bottle and then, oh, look at the label. Oh, and there's some Aboriginal, my artwork sits behind it. Oh, what's Ghana? Where's that region? Oh, it's McLaren Vale. Oh, I didn't know. So it's just that conversation piece that I think that's really resonating. And we're not going too deep at a tasting event or nothing like that. It's just that one piece around traditional owners is enough for now.
Welcome to Series 3 of Healthy Minds, Healthy Vines, a podcast proudly developed by the Wine Grape Council of South Australia and hosted by Callum McPherson and Nick Ryan. I'm Lisa Bonnier, CEO of the Council, and I'm delighted to bring you this series. The Wine Grape Council of South Australia represents our state's independent wine grape growers. We aim to provide growers with timely support and effective representation through advocacy, collaboration and knowledge building. South Australia is home to just over half of Australia's vineyard area, and it's the diversity of our independent growers, their stories, challenges and opportunities that shows just how important connection is in grape growing. In this new series, we bring you 10 unique conversations, sharing a rich mix of views, experiences, knowledge and questions from across our grape and wine community. From personal journeys to practical insights, each episode is designed to spark thought, build connection and support well-being in our industry. So wherever you're listening, in the vineyard, on the road or at home, we invite you to tune in and be part of building healthy minds and healthy vines together.
Pauly Vandenbergh grew up on the west coast of South Australia with a strong sense of cultural identity and connection to country. He went on to play professional basketball in the NBL before building a career spanning sport, community and enterprise. Today, Pauly wears many hats, from founding Munda Wines to leading the Tjindu Foundation, establishing the Aboriginal Basketball Academy, running Wanama's Seafood in Port Lincoln and serving in leadership roles with the Port Adelaide Football Club and the AFL. At the heart of it all is his mission to create opportunities for the next generation, shift the narrative around Indigenous voices and build the kind of pathways he wished were there when he was growing up. He's a passionate storyteller, a mentor, a father of 4, and he makes the time to take care of his health with the help of his wife's yoga and breathwork routines. Here's Pauly Vandenbergh.
Pauly, what was it like growing up on the west coast of SA?
Oh, I loved it. It's just, it's home. Home is, Tjindu will always be home for me. I always call all my businesses the spiritual home as well. But all my family still live there. Try and get back as often as possible. And it's funny, like when you have kids that don't grow up there, like I've got 3 now, and when I take them back, they feel connected. And my eldest particularly is like, can we go back to Tjindu? She asked me the other day. So yeah, it's good that they start to feel that connection that I had growing up. And I think we're pretty spoiled, sort of the Eyre Peninsula, and the things you're able to do and get away with and enjoy. It's home for sure.
What's a Tjindu childhood like?
It's interesting. I probably would be lying to you if I didn't say it was pretty challenging. A lot of racism, and we had a fair share of those sorts of challenges, but also some of my best mates today are the mates that I used to battle with and fight at young people. And I guess it's those things where you kind of both look at each other and you don't have a real sense of who you are, but once you start to spend time with each other, you start to go, hey, we actually have a lot in common, fishing and hunting and camping and drinking and sports and all that sort of stuff. And, we once we realised that we actually have more in common than we don't, we started to become really connected. And it's today we look back and we actually laugh about some of the battles and fights that we used to have. But I always found it a really peaceful place in general, like particularly the camping side and being on country and being away from sort of electronics and stuff like that. I think that's the part that always fills my cup.
How do you go from fighting to connecting?
I think that's that piece where sometimes, when you're in a small town like that and you might get an association team together as a football team, and you go down to Mortlach Shield, or you might play in a basketball association competition, and all of a sudden you start gelling and you start to just talk with each other, and then all of a sudden, do you want to come around home for a play? And I think that's just the part about spending time with each other. And so, Yeah, one of my good friends is high up in Toyota now, and he invited me to his board meeting at Toyota last year, and we were talking about the fights that we used to have in high school, literally in Tjindu, and now we're like almost attached at the hip, So it just proves, once you spend time with each other and you can't start to understand each other, you start to form better relationships,
That's the power of sport, that equaliser.
100%. I always talked about sports, and I sort of learned this from my grandfather. Talked about the amazing impact that sports has, particularly back home in Tjindu. It was really an icebreaker for relationship building in Tjindu. Whilst we have an Indigenous football club back there, Kiniva, which is our club, we've always had sort of Aboriginal players going throughout the other teams, and I think that's always been powerful. I think there's a bit of a challenge on trying to get more non-Aboriginal people to come playing in the Aboriginal team, which we would love that. But if you look at AFL today, like the AFL sport particularly has really been a sport that's broken down so many barriers and formed better relationships, because you're not really thinking about people's colour of their skin when you're going for like Port Adelaide. You're just going for one club, one colour. And I've probably why I've really enjoyed using my platform as a former basketballer or working in the AFL or working at Port Adelaide to try and improve relationships, and that education piece that comes with it, because I think that's the other important part about, for a long time, I don't think Aboriginal people have really spoken about who we are, and I think, in the last 10, 15 years, we've kind of opened up our doors a little bit to say, this is actually who we are. We actually are a fun culture. We actually take the piss a lot. We're embracive. We bring in all people, but I think we've stayed silent, and then that people making assumptions about who we are as people, I think that's been quite common and broad, So I think today we're starting to see some real improvements in relationships between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people here in Australia, particularly.
What's that narrative been that you've been working hard to combat throughout your life? How would you put into words what that narrative is?
Like when I moved from Tjindu to Adelaide, I used to get a lot of stuff. Like particularly when you're the only Aboriginal person, say in your classroom. I was the only Aboriginal at Adelaide High. I came to Adelaide High, and I was the only Aboriginal person in the whole year level at one stage. And then you kind of find yourself in those situations quite consistent around. I was the only Aboriginal kid on the basketball court. I was the only Aboriginal kid in the cinema, in the shopping centre. So it was a huge shift for me coming from Tjindu, which is quite a big Aboriginal population, to just being not just the minority, like literally the only.
Yeah.
So I really struggled with that part.
Feel displaced.
Yeah, and then I became even more quiet, like I was more silent as a person, and so people that I went to school with, my basketball teammates, if they hear me talk today, they often say, "Why didn't you say stuff about who you are back then?" But when you're by yourself, you kind of feel like, I don't want to say too much. I don't want to rock the boat. Worried about the consequences.
Like no one wants to hear it.
Yeah, no one wants to hear it. All that sort of stuff. And so that's one part about finding my voice was probably took time and maturity. And the other piece was just about the stereotypes that comes with Aboriginal people, whether we drink a lot, whether as men we're violent, we don't work, we're always late. I remember being on a bus one time, and I still have this, I remember these fellow classmates seen some Aboriginal people on the side of the road, and they used the word portigata.
Yeah.
And that just, it was like a moment for me. Like I was like, man, one day I want to change that, that whole portigata. And Nick, you're very familiar with that.
Yep.
And it's just, that was just kind of this casual racism that we kind of talk about, and how do you stop that? And then, leading up to the referendum, I think a lot of that just got elevated and highlighted, and, there were a lot of lies told about Aboriginal people and how much money we get and all this free land that we get and free houses and all that, which is all just false narrative, and I think I've always tried to create a platform, whether it was from my sporting career or at the AFL or right now with my businesses, is I want to create a business that has a platform to help educate, and I think that's the part that really excites me, to be honest.
I guess it is difficult to stand up and speak when you see, the consequences of those that do. And the Adam Goods thing is the most sort of stark example. A man who stands up and, proudly, establishes his cultural identity and then gets howled down and run out of the game as a result.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. Like I often reflect on that Adam Goodes part because, you know, we've always been told to stay in the corner, don't talk too loud, you know, and that's probably where my upbringing came from too, you know. And, you know, if you think about that Adam Goodes situation, it's a really good example, right? Like, you spoke to most people, non-Aboriginal people, about sports in general, right? If you ask them if they're sports lovers, and if you ask them about like the haka,
yep.
Say, what does the haka look like for you? What does that mean to you? Majority would be like spine tingling. Love it. It's powerful. It's strong.
Wish we had one of our own.
The moment we do it as Aboriginal people, all hell breaks loose.
Yep.
You know, like he celebrated a goal during Indigenous round that his late mother designed the jumper of, celebrating our culture and all. Like, you know, it's just crazy. You know, and I feel really jealous of countries like New Zealand, you know, just how embracive. I'm not saying they don't have their challenges as well, but, you know, you get off a plane in Auckland or wherever in New Zealand, you're immersed in Māori culture.
Yeah.
You know, we don't actually have that here in Australia.
Turn the TV on in your hotel room and there's a, you know, Maori language TV channel.
You know, all of their sporting teams embed Māori culture. You know, the Tall Ferns and all their basketball teams, they do the haka for that. You know, they put their culture, non-Maori as well, it's all embracive, you know. We don't seem to want to do that in our country, you know, like
what do you think
Wallabies.
The difference is?
Oh, man, I don't know. And maybe the treaty maybe had something to do with it. They've got a lot of Māori people in Parliament that are always talking about their culture. You know, the education department over there have really embraced Māori culture, and then they teach the language, they teach the haka. So I think it's a whole approach that they've done in New Zealand, you know, like from when you step off the plane, you know, and I've got friends that have moved there recently in the last sort of decade and just say, my son's learning the haka over here. It's amazing. He loves it, you know. You know, even like the Wallabies tried to add a few Indigenous words to the anthem. All hell breaks loose. You know, it's like, we're not trying to remove anything. This is about what does inclusion look like for us as a country, you know? And so, yeah, I just think we've got a long way to go still in this country to fully embrace 65,000 years, you know? And it's moments like this, it's moments like, you know, the Wallabies doing that. And, you know, as much as people disliked the Adam Goodes part, it was still a conversation that was needed to be had, you know, and called out, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, they're so openly proud of it in New Zealand, and we should be like that here.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Because if I said to you guys right now, okay, if I asked you this question, when you think about New Zealand, what comes to mind? What would you say?
That culture.
Yes, you're Māori. What else?
You say rugby.
Rugby.
But you say
And the landscape.
Yeah.
And just the pride in it, I think.
And so then
and tourism, people travel for that aspect. They want to go connect with that and be part of that and see that.
Yeah, it's very cool. And so if we're overseas, we all travel. I know you travel a lot. But like if we're overseas and people, oh, you're Australian. Tell us about Australia. What would we say? Well, what are we about? What are we like?
Yeah, well, I guess different people have different things, but I think there is a small and it needs to grow sort of mindset in this country that we can be proud of living in the country with the oldest living culture on earth. I think that's something I'm incredibly proud to
100%.
to talk about in Australia, and we'll get on to why wine is a useful thing for doing that in a bit. But yeah, I think there's a long way to go, as you say here, but I think there is there's something really special to build on.
Yeah,
we should
definitely.
actually be embracing it.
Yeah.
And to say that, and again, when we talk about wine, we talk about the new world and the old world of wine, and we're trying to, in wine circles, trying to sort of almost change that conversation a bit and always say, Australia is not the new world of wine. In fact, Australia is, in some ways the oldest, the oldest part of the old world.
Yeah, for sure.
We have vines in the oldest soils on earth, and there's a story behind those soils that we need to be out there selling.
Now you're talking, brother.
Yeah, this is music to your ears.
Music to my ears.
So if someone says to you, tell me about Australia, what do you say?
Yeah, I'll say we're the oldest surviving culture in the world. We've got 65,000 years of culture and heritage that's how I started. Now, other Australians might say beach, laid-back lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think 100% that's definitely what I love about Australia as well, like taking the piss, all that sort of stuff, you know. But I often feel like what Nick's sort of saying is we're forgotten about, you know, we're just sort of this part down the end here, you know, and that's where I want us to get to eventually. And whatever it looks like, it's all good. But, and a part of that is, like I said, maybe we haven't opened up ourselves enough as well to teach. And then, you know, what does it look like when I talk about that holistic approach around, you know, that comes through from the schooling, education? Because if you think about your education, did you get taught much about Aboriginal culture?
In university, there was a course for it. While I was at school, I think there might have been one instance of it then, and obviously it's through a particular lens. It doesn't get into it in the kind of detail or from the kind of perspective. And we're talking, you know, I'm not old compared to you guys, but
mentioning that.
But we're going back. I graduated 2011, so I saw some school kids at my work. Some school kids at my work yesterday, and I was like, "Oh wow, you guys would have been born when I graduated." So I'm slowly starting to feel like the old guy now.
You're getting there, bro.
But yeah, even going back then, that's what it was like. I don't know if it's changed a bit now. Hopefully, it's a bit better, but there wasn't much of a focus on it.
I guess, and I'm just thinking about it myself now that, you know, my primary school growing up in Port Augusta, you know, there was an element of that because we're in Port Augusta, but high school coming, you know, down to Adelaide, when we teach Australian history, it's, you know, white fella history.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
World War I and World War II.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, which is important too.
Right?
Yeah, 100%.
And all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's part of the story.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the Anzacs. I love what it stands for, what it did for our country. And November 11 is a really important day for all Australians. I embrace all that part too, you know. It's just, you know, there's parts of the frontier war that we don't celebrate or want to acknowledge, all that sort of stuff too, you know. So it's like one side we want to celebrate what you know, our Anzacs did, but the other side we don't want to talk about, you know, the other parts of my people and what happened to my people, you know. But, you know, we as I said, I feel like we're on the right track for sure.
How important is it to see Aboriginal people succeeding in fields outside of sport?
Oh man, it's so important. So unfortunately, you know, when you think about if you mentioned who's the most famous Aboriginal people, you'd often go Kathy Freeman and, you know, sporting athletes generally, you know, but, you know, there's plenty of other stories that we want to talk about, like David Yanipen, who's on the $50 note, you know, his incredible invention 80 years ago around the shears. But that's probably what drives me every day, is about creating business opportunities and industries that we've just been invisible or just haven't had access to, which is why, you know, we started the tuna business over in Port Lincoln, and, you know, that's going pretty good.
So tell us how how that all began.
You know, I guess Mum just was trying to push me around sort of not just relying on being a public servant and working in the government for your whole life. And then I just started thinking about some business opportunities, and seafood was just such a big part of my family's diet growing up, you know, along the coast there. And we were pretty spoiled with seafood along sort of Tjindu to Port Lincoln with, man, everything and the best stuff too, you know, so really spoiled through there. And I saw an opportunity to purchase some tuna quota, and managed to sort of get some really good sound advice, and joined a joint venture partner with one of the big tuna barons over there. And they really guided me about the whole industry and talking about what the tuna industry looks like. And then sort of took about 2 years of pretty heavy sort of lifting, and ended up purchasing 25 tonne of southern bluefin tuna quota, and sort of became the first Indigenous group to get into that industry. And that was tough in itself, just being, you know, sitting around the table with sort of these big tuna barons, and you're this little Indigenous kid from Tjindu, which I love, by the way. That was a pretty eye-opening experience. But as I said, you know, before to you, Nick, is, you know, we are a small fish, you know, in a very big pond there, but it's certainly really exciting about the opportunities around being in that industry, but how do you grow it? We got huge aspirations around sort of creating a processing plant, and then maybe having a seafood shop or something like that. I'm all about trying to see if there's an opportunity for us to provide back to our community as well. And, you know, That's the other piece where, once upon a time where fish was so accessible from the shores of Tjindu, now they've just been driven right out because of the commercial fishing. So how do we get those opportunities back into our families and communities, So that was the motivation around, and as well as employment, but those were the motivations around creating a seafood sort of business out of Port Lincoln. Sort of some challenges in there still around that market, but yeah, we feel like we're in a good place with that at the moment.
And then when did wine come into the picture?
Yeah, and about 3-4 years later.
Could have something to drink with all the tuna.
Yeah, it's 100%. I tell you, it's a bit like that. About 4 years after the Wanama was established in Port Lincoln, I sort of thinking about how do I launch this tuna business, and wanted to sort of do an event and launch it. Then I thought, let me just check to see if I can find an Indigenous wine company. And there'd been a few that had dabbled in it, and there wasn't really anyone that was really coming up on my searches. And, I enjoyed a drop myself, and I just started really thinking about that industry. And, I started just thinking about, there are a lot of wine labels that use Aboriginal words, which I think is great. That's fantastic. They probably used our artwork as well, which is also really good. And I just thought there was a nice opportunity there to actually start going into that industry and actually start using that as a really huge opportunity to have these sorts of conversations. And then what I wanted to do was not take anything away from the wine region, the wine GIs. I wanted to actually just elevate and coexist with the traditional owners of the land to which those wine regions sit on, So, yeah, I as I said, I love wine. I love drinking wine. Huge red drinker, and just enjoy what wine does. It's a bit like this. Like, it's a shame it's 9:30 in the morning here, but I like the idea of having a wine in your hand and the conversations that usually come out of that, And so having a yarn is probably a bit of the mantra of sort of Munda Wines. So Munda means land in my language. And so it was always about honouring the land, both wine and traditional owners.
Yeah, and I think I've always thought it's something where, a Western sensibility can mesh very easily with, an Aboriginal way of looking at the world, is through wine. We're constantly talking about, the nature of the place being translated into the wine. And terroir is kind of an Aboriginal idea before it was ever a French 100%. Idea that, the land has a spirit and something that can be translated into the wine. So, how much of an opportunity do you think this is to explain to the world the way that Aboriginal people see country through the language of wine?
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity there. Like, we just returned from Japan last week, and it really resonated with the Japanese people there. I'll come back to this as well, but we actually make really good wine. Yeah, our wines are exceptional. It's not like we're, this is cheap wine we're making and slapping a label on. Like, the wines have to stack up.
Yeah.
And that was really important from the start. Like, as much as I want to tell a story, the wine actually has to make sense to people. And I feel like we are making some really good wine, like everyone is. I think there's some really great winemakers around. So that was really important, but it's starting to really resonate. We've been into Malaysia for the last 2 years, and that was solely, I feel like, on the back of this idea of what does an Indigenous brand look like, and how are we telling a story around it. We're into Quebec, SAQ, Canada. We've got a huge opportunity in the States. I was in the States last year with the Native American Chamber of Commerce and all their sort of all their stores and casinos, and I couldn't believe how much ownership they have in the States, the Native Americans. So I feel like those exporting is a really big opportunity for us as Munda, but equally, I want to have that impact here in domestically in Australia, and I want people to know that this is Kaurna country as well as McLaren Vale.
Yeah,
this is Nadgery and Paramount country as well as Barossa. The Wadani people, like, they're such beautiful, embracive people over in Margaret River, but not many people in that industry know that it's the Wadani country, So it's not taking anything away. Like I keep saying, it's always about this coexisting part that I think is really important. And wine, man, it's just, we can take it anywhere. And that's what I love about it.
What are some sort of meaningful steps that can be taken to sort of really embed that down? I've always thought that, there could be, what country are we on, when we, as well as the GI on every bottle of wine we produce.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've done, right? I've got the traditional owners on the front. I love, Belinda from The Cutting. She's done an acknowledgement of country on the back of her label. Now she's a person of colour who gets it as well. But, there's kind of feeling like there's this flow-on effect a little bit with some winemakers and labels that just want to become a bit more embracive of Aboriginal culture. It doesn't have to necessarily be on the label, but, I've had, Yalumba reach out, and I've done some, cultural awareness workshops out there with the staff and crew. And so I feel like it's just growing organically. It's not. I'm not trying to force it down people's throat. I don't feel like I'm
not going to be part of labelling law.
No, 100%.
Let it happen.
Just let it happen organically. And, I've been talking to Wine Australia about, can we have the traditional owner groups next to when you're talking about registrations and stuff like that, just coexisting again. So that might take some time, might take a few years, but it's not taking anything away. It's just, again, I just want to do this together, and I just want to elevate my people a little bit more, and I think this industry in particular has got huge reach, particularly externally, particularly from an export point of view, and people coming into our country. I was fortunate enough to get on a Netflix show sort of recently with Somebody Feed Phil, and, huge following. He came and spent some time with myself and Daniel Motlop, and, he's got his native food cooking, and he's trying some of our wines, and all of a sudden he becomes this mouthpiece. And that's the part that you want, is to have non-Aboriginal people helping tell that story and changing the narrative for who we are.
Pathways for Aboriginal people into the wine business, and we've talked about this before. There are sensitivities around, alcohol in Aboriginal communities. There's no getting away from that. And that's, it's been difficult for you at points. So, how do you manage that situation?
Yeah, it's probably one of the first questions I get asked, you're going into an alcohol industry that's been quite devastating for my people and stuff like that. And I get that. But there's also, majority of Aboriginal people don't drink. I want to tell the real stats about Aboriginal people and drinking. It's easy to stick a camera in some of our situations that aren't great for Aboriginal people, but it's amazing the narrative that the media portray with my people compared to, say, Melbourne Cup.
Yeah.
Right. So if you looked at Melbourne Cup, you would say that are we saying that all non-Aboriginal people have a drinking problem? Right? It's not the case, right? It's small pockets, 100%. And then I also talk about how alcohol was introduced into our communities, right? Which was a form of payment, along with tobacco, right? And flour, right? So let's have a conversation about the equal pay that occurred in 1966 with Golf Whitlam, we could have that conversation as well. And then, again, I'm not pushing this to my people. My family actually asked, can I produce a non-alcoholic wine so they can support me right now? That's a little while off, although there's some really good stuff going around, I hear. But so, I think it's all relative, right? Like, it's just the narrative you want to tell. And I just think that there's an opportunity to debunk some of those myths about Aboriginal people and alcohol.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense.
On paper, you're a very, very busy man. So you've got...
I thought you were going to say very, very good looking man.
Not on paper, but in real life. But you've got Munda, you've got Wanama, you've got your consulting, you've got your foundation, you got your job with the AFL. How are you doing all these things?
Wow. That's why you have a wine company. Nah, I don't know. It's just, some of that's just happened organically, like my first foundation, I've always wanted to have a foundation that just supported Aboriginal kids to get through school. So 2017, I created the Aboriginal Basketball Academy just because of my basketball background, and wanted to take basketball into schools and just get them healthy and running and getting them active. And they didn't have to necessarily have skills in basketball. It was just about using basketball as a sport and vehicle. And that started working really well and got some really good support, and that's still going. So that was my first foundation. And then when I kind of left Port Adelaide, a couple of the programs that I developed at Port Adelaide, they didn't want to continue with. So it just gave me another opportunity to create this Tjindu Foundation here that I've got now, which Tjindu in our language means sun. And it was just all about what the sun means to us as Aboriginal people and the giver of life and all that sort of stuff. And it just exploded. Like, I didn't realize how good it was going to go, and the support we were going to get from some of our, sponsors, and the state and federal government had just been really quite behind the whole brand and the whole program and what we're trying to achieve. And, we're getting some amazing education results. The last 3 years, we've actually had 100% success rates for Year 12 completion rates.
Wow.
That we have on average about 70 students every year that come through the program, and it's all around, the reward is football. The reward is playing a game of football. You have to do 80% attendance. You have to have a C+ average. You can't have any suspensions at school. So there's all these things that we put in place that they agree to at the start and they come up with before they can play the game of football. And we've been quite fortunate. Some of the athletes we've had come through Tjindu, like we've had Nazaya Wangani Malera, Isaac Rankin, Cozzy Pickett, Tyson Stengels, there's about 11 AFL players that have actually come through the program. And I feel like that's just the bonus, I feel like if you look at those players in particular, did we have an impact on their longevity in the game? Because that's one of the issues that we have at the AFL is, one, we're not having enough kids coming through the pathways, but two, once they get in, they're spat out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But if you look at those ones that have come through our foundation, because we do put such onuses on them and their education and getting through school and what that means.
Yeah. So that sort of rigor that's going to be required once they
get to the AFL, right?
They've already got those habits in place.
Absolutely.
How have you been successful in getting through to kids about the importance of stuff outside of football and getting them to actually lock in and do that? What do you attribute that to?
Like, we're pretty tough. We're pretty tough on them. I think that's probably one of the keys to it, but it's like tough love, so we'll be pretty hard on them if they're missing school or they're coming late. And we just talk about real world, like this is the reality. If you want that next stage in your life, you want to break the cycle or close the gap, or do you want to be the first? We actually talk about that a lot. Are you the first? Do you want to be the first to finish Year 12? Do you want to be the first to go to university? Like, the role modeling effect that you would create for your family and your little cousins and sisters and brothers will be huge, right? And we'll stop talking about this gap that exists at the moment in this country, And so we're quite hard on them as staff, but, there's this embracive part that's all about making sure they explore their culture, be proud of their identity, because some of our kids are coming in not sure, sort of still trying to figure that part out. So once they start feeling proud about who they are, no matter what the colour of their skin is, that's another big issue that we face with a lot of our kids, is they feel a bit challenged by being fair-skinned and, people saying, oh, you're not Aboriginal because you're not dark enough, or you don't look like, an Aboriginal person apparently. So that part is where we do a lot of work in that space, which is why we teach Aboriginal studies. And then the other part is embracing them at school, supporting them at schools. We have tutoring every Fridays as well, where kids are coming up, doing catch-up. And as I said, the results from year 12 completion rates, attendance rates, kids going on to university is just incredible at the moment. So really happy where the foundation is heading. And we're actually trying to expand now to have a bigger cohort. So we have more of an impact, because last week we had trials for the Year 10 intake. We had 75 kids rock up just for Year 10.
No. Wow.
And we have 75 just total.
So practically, how does that work? How do kids become part of the program?
Yeah, they register, and they come to our trials, and then we put them through a few fun activities throughout the day, play a bit of footy. They have to provide their report card from the year before, and then they have to sit through an interview. So we make them do an interview, ask them some questions, not hard, but it just gives them that idea about interviewing techniques, and get them to make eye contact and speaking clearly and all that sort of stuff. So they have to learn straight away to sell themselves before they get given a spot. So it's highly competitive day.
Yeah.
Family, I had to remove myself because family were reaching out to me and going, hey, your nephew's going in.
Remove us.
Yeah, I said, no, I can't be a part of it because I'm just too connected to everyone. But hopefully we can expand so we can get more kids in.
What does it do for you creating all these opportunities, given your own upbringing and going from being the only Aboriginal kid in whatever context, and now you got 75 kids coming into year 10, and you've got your foundation, all these other paths, you've become that guy. What is that, your own sense of satisfaction from that?
If you spend enough time with me, you'll know that it's not my why. It's not why I do it. I probably don't even sit too much and think about that impact. Maybe I've taken that part a bit for granted. I think about what would have worked, what would have helped me when I left Tjindu and came to Adelaide. And, as staff, older staff like Wade Thompson, that's been with me since Port Adelaide, he's from Port Augusta, we often laugh and sit there, imagine if we had this. We say that all the time, imagine if we had this. And I think that was part of maybe just our experiences and trying to make it a little bit easier, particularly for regional remote kids that come into Adelaide, and trying to make it a space that they feel safe and connected, and it's not too hard because it is such a different world. And Nick, you can attest to the life from Port Augusta even to Adelaide. That even though you're 3 hours away, it's almost a different world that you grow up in when you're in regional.
Yeah. And there are a lot of kids that wouldn't make that move.
That's right.
They could have, probably should have, but didn't because it seemed too big a gulf to jump.
We think about the talent.
Yeah.
You think about footy talent alone. There's plenty of my cousins that should have played AFL football. 100%, no doubt. They were better. I had cousins way better basketballers than me, but I moved and go on to play NBL and go to China and all these places. But there were cousins that used to destroy me, And so maybe if they had a Tjindu or an Aboriginal Basketball Academy, they might have made that move, and who knows where they might have ended up, But so that's probably my why, is trying to just create these spaces for our kids to thrive.
What do you attribute your success to? You mentioned your NBL career there. You played a season with the Cannons, even though your cousins were better than you. Why have you been the guy to succeed and make stuff happen? And you're obviously someone who doesn't just talk about it, goes and does it, and break into wine, break into tuna, all the things that you've done. Like, who are you to be able to make all this happen?
Yeah, I don't know, right? That's a good question. I really don't know. It does my wife's head in, because if I'm sitting there quiet on the lounge, I'm thinking about my next move, right? And for something that, I don't know what it is about me, but I feel like I believe anything's possible. And I say that to kids all the time. I said, none of you in this room can tell me that nothing's possible, given I come from Tjindu. And I made the trek to Adelaide, and I've done all this stuff. That means any of you can do that. Any of you can do that. But my mindset has always been, not that I was, right? Not that I was, but I thought I was the best basketball player on the court. But I went into that thinking that when I go into the AFL, I think I'm actually the best Indigenous engagement manager in the land. I'm not saying, maybe I'm not, but that's how I go into it, right? I'm not saying I'm the best winemaker or I have the best wine either, but my mindset has always been about, I've got this confidence that I feel like, anything is possible. So I just take that with me everywhere, and it does people's head in constantly, But I just want to create a better life for my kids, particularly. That's probably my biggest motivator is my 3 kids. It's just giving them a life that, that they don't have to have the challenges that I had growing up.
But I mean, it's a rare and precious thing to have that confidence again. And you're talking about, you're growing up, you get knocked down, a lot. How do you find that sort of resilience? Harder for an Aboriginal kid from Tjindu, coming to town than just about anyone. But how do you find that within yourself to just push through?
Yeah, I think it's always been my circle, to be honest. Yeah, I've got a pretty tight circle, and your circle can be quite brutal, give you some hard truths and honesty and stuff like that. And they certainly did that throughout my basketball career. But there's always, that circle's always been there. My, just people that I've been able to lean in. But, my wife is just incredible. She's just, as much as I frustrate her with the way I'm and, I want to keep doing and I want to keep helping people, and that often, comes at the cost of my own immediate family sometimes. She's never not told me to do something. that's going to be of benefit to the bigger, broader community, you know. And so my wife for sure has probably been my person that I just need to lean in on, and then the rest is probably just my circle, just to be help me bounce back. Because 100%, I've had more business failures. You know, looking at 2 business opportunities that have worked, I've had other businesses that have fallen over. But you know,
what do you learn from the ones that fall over?
Finding the right partners.
Yeah,
finding the right partners to help you on it. I've never wanted to be 100% owner of something. I've always wanted to have other people that are industry experts, I should say. But the right partners has probably been, and the right people around you is probably where I fell over last time. Yeah, but learning, still got a while ways to go yet with these two companies. But I feel like Munda's in a really good space, and we're going in a really positive and quite exciting direction.
How did you get started with Munda, from having that idea of we need some wine on the table to go with the tuna? How did you actually get going?
Yeah, fortunately, I give a lot of praise to Tom Harvey a lot. He was a legend. We approached him about this idea and concept, and then he just opened up these doors, man. He gave us his winemaker, Renee, and Renee was just incredible, man. And she just produced this beautiful, like right up my alley, Shiraz from Blewett Springs, McLaren Vale. And like Tom has just been incredible from Chalk Hill. And that was how it actually really started. Our first wine, our first child, our firstborn was this beautiful Shiraz out of Blewett Springs. And then it just started evolving. And then former business partner knew Marco Cirillo. And then I was a big fan of Grenache. And, Marco's one of the best sort of Grenache makers in the world. And it was just spot on. It was just incredible what we were tasting from him. And he understood this whole, because he kept talking about, I'm fourth generation wine grower. And I kept saying, yeah, but you got 2,000 years of generation under you. You know, that's the power in your vines. You know, your father didn't pull the vines out 50 years ago, and look where you are now. But I'm here to talk about the soils, and that resonated with him as well. And then it just started evolving, and then managed to just keep expanding. And I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe you guys, or Nick, you could do some research on this for me at some point. But we've got wines in a lot of regions across Australia, and we want to just tell those different stories, right? So you think about the wines that we have. We've got a Chardonnay that was one of the first that come out of Tumbarumba, New South Wales, so Walgaloo. Then we've got a Pinot out of Yarra Valley, so the Wurundjeri people. We've got the Shiraz out of McLaren Vale, the Grenache out of Barossa. We've got a Cab Sav out of Pathaway, which I know Pathaway and Coonawarra have sort of been struggling a bit, but this is this whole idea about how do we elevate that part, and particularly the traditional owners, that no one would have an idea of who they are. And then we've got this beautiful Chardonnay out of Margaret River, right, the Wadani people. And then we've just launched the sparkling out of Tasmania, right, the Palawa. So we've got all these regions. So I don't know any other wine company, I know wine companies have other labels, but under one label, we've got this massive spread of wines, which are just beautiful, but it just allows us to tell these different stories, particularly the Palawa Carney sparkling we've done just outside of Launceston. Those stories down there are incredibly powerful, right?
Yeah.
Particularly the history of Aboriginal people down there. And, even back to that point about, me being an Aboriginal person making an alcoholic sort of beverage. Yeah. There's all these amazing stories down in Tasmania about the Palawa people having these natural fermented trees that created this sort of 3% beverage, that they use for different purposes.
Yeah, it was one of the myths about Aboriginal people. There was no, fermented beverage in Australia before white man, but it's not true.
It's not true, right? The Kaurna people did it as well here with the roots of the Quandong tree, and Mike Minnie's sort of written a lot about that. So those are the stories that I feel like we should just be elevating some of that. We're not saying we're part of our culture is wine making, but naturally we've had that in place for thousands of years. So the idea of having all those stories and opportunities is really, really cool.
And realizing how much there is to it as you go along, because you start out, you're like, oh yeah, we'll make a wine, and then go, oh, hold on, as you just listed off, there's all this going on and all these regions, all these areas, they're all sort of telling the same story.
Yeah.
And it's just unfolding.
Absolutely.
I think it's important for Australian wine in general, when in an increasingly competitive international market and everyone's looking for, I think an understanding. Most people in wine can't quite embrace that the way you can, but at least understanding, acknowledging and talking about how that culture can shape our attitudes to the places we grow and make wine is really important and such an opportunity for Australian wine.
Yeah.
What were some of those international markets saying about what you're selling in some of those discussions? What do they like about it?
One they like the wines.
Yeah, that's the first thing.
Right, the first
they have to like that.
Yeah, like they taste it, then all of a sudden they're looking at the label. And that's kind of the order you want, really, right? Like taste it and then go, oh, that tastes nice, and then grab the bottle and then, oh, look at the label. Oh, what? And there's some Aboriginal, my artwork sits behind it. Oh, what's Ghana? Where's that region? Oh, it's McLaren Vale. Oh, I didn't know. So it's just that conversation piece that I think that's really resonating. And we're not going too deep at a tasting event or nothing like that. It's just that one piece around traditional owners is enough for now, And then when we got people on the road selling wine, there's been this hesitation, right? And it's probably a little bit like teachers in class teaching Aboriginal history, right? There's this hesitation about, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but in the wine industry, there was a point probably in Nick's journey that you couldn't pronounce French words properly at the start.
Yeah.
Right? It's just the same. Like we're giving you the license to make mistakes. It's all good. No one's going to, if you say Paramount or Nadri wrong, no one's going to jump down your throat. You're having a crack, and this is the part of it. Like we want you to actually embrace that part.
Start the conversation.
Like it can only be of positivity for us as a country.
And how do you look after yourself with all this going on? Because we know that if you don't have that maintenance in check of your own mental health and physical health and everything, and that isn't where it needs to be, you can't possibly go off and run 6 different things and keep it all together.
Yeah.
So you're an ideas man and a man who brings ideas to fruition, but you actually have to have the basics right to be able to physically and mentally do that. So how do you keep
100%.
yourself in check?
Yeah, like I'm pretty fortunate. The lady that I married, Emma, is she's a fitness fanatic. Like she's right. We own 3 gyms. We used to own 3 F45s, and when they were the hit, and then she's a master yoga instructor. She's just finished her master's in breathwork. So we do that every night. Breathing and breathwork is something it's just part of our daily or nightly routine. Like I love yoga. About 2 years ago, we purchased an infrared sauna. We do hot and colds 3 times a week. So the health part for me is the only reason why I feel like I get up every morning, and it's all because of her. That's where I come back to that whole appreciation of my wife, because she keeps that part of me really in check, that I'm doing all those things. If you jumped in my car, you'd see there's a green juice that I use, that I sip till lunchtime, that she makes. And so all that health part is, really important. I do have a wine label, but I've got this big piece that's huge around health, mental health, well-being is really critical. I try and do 10,000 steps a day. That's not always possible, but yeah, that's the goal. So I do have these little goals, but it's the wife that really keeps me in check with that.
So it sounds like it's better than when you were playing basketball.
Mentally, I feel better.
Physically,
not so much. So mentally I feel really good. But when you get to this age, brother, things start to slow down really quickly.
That'll be a while.
Oh wow!
What kind of life do you want to see your kids lead? What hopes and for their future do you have?
I think we all got the same worries, brother. Cost of living, how they're going to afford a house. I want to try and take that worry away from them, so they've always got a roof over their head. And at the end of the day, I just want them to be happy. That's all we want as parents, just be happy. And back to that saying about, I always instill that anything is possible with my kids, and that's probably about it. But yeah, the stresses of cost of living for me really worries me, and having a roof over their head if I'm not around. But we're slowly working towards it. So hopefully that'll be right. Otherwise, I'm going to come move out your way, brother.
Yeah. Well, 3 kids. Port Adelaide, one to run a tuna business, one to run a wine business,
there we go.
One to play for Port Adelaide.
Yeah, there we go. The son's right into footy at the moment. Yeah, so anyway, we'll see where that goes. Yeah.
So you're planning to narrow it down a bit more to wine and a couple of other pursuits, or you always got your eyes open to wherever the wind takes you?
It's a bit like that. Yeah, it's a bit like wherever. I feel like there's no shortage of opportunities around, but I love my role at the AFL. Spending time with clubs and other athletes is always rewarding. Yeah, the 2 foundations are going fantastic. The 2 businesses are going good. So right now I'm comfortable. I don't want to add anything more, that's for sure. But yeah, sometimes it's one of those things that something might come up that might resonate with me, and my wife would hate for me to jump into that, but that's probably what I would do if there was a right opportunity.
How much, I mean, that role at the AFL, and, I've talked about it, a lot in the past, but and the work you did at Port Adelaide, and now you've spread it across the AFL. I mean, how important is it still? There's been so much good work done with Aboriginal, footballers, but how much more is there to do, and how important it is to keep maintaining that sort of program and make sure that Indigenous pathways into the AFL, and once they're in the AFL, they are properly considered.
It's still really critical. Like when I first joined the AFL, the role that I had at Port Adelaide, not every club sort of had that and embraced that sort of role. So when I joined the AFL, was one of the things that I was really pushing about, could we mandate that every club had an Indigenous player development manager? And Gil was really supportive of that, and ended up mandating it for all clubs and giving a bit of funding or sort of relief in the funding for that to happen. So all 18 clubs have got that now, and there's some really fantastic ones that are just doing some really power of work with their club as a whole. And then the role that I play is kind of that support from a head office. Like if there's something that they want to raise for their clubland that they want a head office to be aware of, or when you get a remote kid, it's just a different lens you need to put on it. And I always reflect on sort of Jake Need when he was at Port Adelaide, and this kid came from Elliott community, which is between Tennant Creek and Darwin, and you couldn't get any more remote, really. And for him to get to Alice Springs, get to St. Pat's down in Ballarat, get drafted to GWS, then get traded to Port Adelaide, and then he's 150-something centimetres, 70 kilos. To get 80 games of AFL out of him is just incredible. Yeah. That's almost unheard of. But you think then, well, who else is out there? Are there any more Liam Jarras around, and all these athletes that have come from really remote communities? So that's the space that we haven't really spent enough time in, is really trying to get to those regional remote communities and try and get that opportunity. Maybe that's something like where these places like Tjindu can help get these kids out of these regional remote communities.
And it's a complex process.
It is. And it's got, and to sort of shift the mindset from clubs to go, like, let's get in Nick Ryan, Largemanu or somewhere, and we're not going to play him in the first year. But if he needs to go home for sorry business or cultural reasons, let him go home, let him come back when he's comfortable. So it's like this gradual process, put him on a rookie list. For 3 years, let's just develop, And so by the time they're 21, all of a sudden we're ready, because the skills aren't the issue. Yeah. It's just the stuff in between, like, whether it's around time or recovery. We don't teach recovery in regional remote communities. Yeah. Recovery can be anything. Just walk home, do nothing, So that education piece. So that's the space I'll kind of be working in at the AFL, is trying to improve those sort of, changing the mindset a little bit around clubs and taking a punt.
Seeing the individual, not just the skills and the player, and seeing that there are greater needs.
If they're bringing you in, Nick, I think you'd have to be full forward.
I ain't no.
He can ruck.
That's right. I was a forward pocket who rested in the ruck.
There we go.
Well, it's good that your wife's going to keep you living a lot longer, Pauly, because it sounds like the work's never going to be done.
No, that's right. No, I've got heaps more to do. Can't stop now. But it's good. It's good. I'm I'm enjoying it, having fun with it, that's for sure.
That's the most important part.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Head to the Wine Grape Council of South Australia website for links and further resources. This is part of a bigger conversation, so feel free to share this podcast with your mates and look after yourselves. Cheers.